Thanks everybody for joining us live. I'm excited to be here today, and to begin, let's start with some introductions. My name is Chandra Patel, and I'm a Senior Director of Marketing at InsideSales.com. My experience spans digital product, marketing, and growth activities across both large-scale Fortune 500 organizations and hyper-growth startups. I love talking about how technology is transforming and accelerating the world of sales. And a fun fact about me is that I've been to 38 different countries. If you ever meet me in person, you are allowed to ask me what's been my favorite country. And I might even tell you about the time that I got stuck in a herd of goats in Nepal. Jen's giving me a funny look right now. And I'm going to say I'm serious. I can't even make it up. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jen Harvey.
Thanks. My name is Jen Harvey, and Chandra, you know this because you're sitting across from me, but our participants may not be able to tell. But I'm rather tall. I'm 6'5" to be exact. So most people, when they meet me, will ask the inevitable question, volleyball or basketball. So let's just set the record straight. The answer is volleyball. That leads to my fun fact about my background. I was fortunate enough to have played on the national champion women's volleyball team at Stanford University. And I also played professionally for a few years in Europe before coming back to the States. It was a really unique and enjoyable experience for me. During my time at Stanford, I studied communication with a focus on human-computer interaction. And I've always been interested in the ways in which we engage with technology. So it was a natural transition for me to begin working my career as a sales manager for a tech company. Consequently, that opportunity gave me completely applicable real-world experience into the challenges that sales managers face. I managed a team of 14 sales reps and was responsible for helping balance their day-to-day activities to drive towards our aggressive revenue targets, as well as provide my forecast outlook to my management. In my current role here at Inside Sales as Director of Customer Success, I've been able to witness this challenge from a bit of a different perspective. I work closely with our customers to help them leverage the insights that our products offer and transform these insights into more effective pipeline management conversations. I particularly enjoy working with new customers as they implement our solution, and it's so gratifying to be able to see them achieve their targets by optimizing how they talk about pipeline with their teams.
Great. What a fantastic background. So today, Jen and I are going to share an overview of the top questions you need to ask in every sales meeting. You'll learn how to improve your pipeline and forecasting processes with these questions. And because they are very specific and actionable, you'll be able to transform the quality of your pipeline calls. And I'm giving away a little teaser here for the end. We'll also share with you the #1 benefit sales managers have seen when they've asked these 3 most critical pipeline questions. But before we begin, there's just a few housekeeping items. Today's webinar will last about 30 minutes, and we'll have some additional time at the end for Q&A. Feel free to type in your questions in the Q&A box as you think of them. We'll be tracking them. This webinar is also being recorded, and I'll share with you how to access the recording at the end of our discussion. Jen, I know you work with many different sales managers, helping them manage and improve their pipeline and forecast processes. Can you tell me about some of the common challenges that you've run into? And not to sound like a cliche, but is it fair to say that they often feel like this fellow?
Yes, you're right. I know how that guy feels, and I bet our participants can also relate. I have heard a bit about this problem, and I can probably guess the common challenges that crop up for sales managers in a few areas. You spend too much of the pipeline meeting watching reps fumble through Excel reports, emails, and Evernote to find basic information about their opportunities. I've even seen the note card method used recently, which is just surprising given all of the technology that we have at our fingertips these days. Second, you have almost no time during meetings to coach reps and are often blindsided by obstacles about specific deals. Finally, because your pipeline meetings are inefficient, you end up using your Sunday nights to put your forecast reports together. If any of these above points describes your experience, I can tell you that you're not alone. Many managers and sales reps are frustrated by the pipeline call. I can also tell you that there's a better way for sales teams to approach these meetings.
Wow, Jen, that's really interesting and kind of amazing to me that so many companies face the same challenges. And I'm sure it's somewhat reassuring to our audience that they're not alone out there with these sorts of problems. So now that we've talked about that, what do they need to start asking to change this situation?
The first place a manager needs to start is by understanding, does the rep have enough coverage to meet their target? Let me start off by unpacking that, as there are a few components here. You need to begin by having a clear understanding of the goalpost. What is the quota for that month or for that quarter? Now, based on where you want to go, do you have enough pipeline to get there? That's what I mean by coverage. This should be the starting point of every pipeline meeting. If there's enough coverage to meet your goals, then you can move on and talk about how healthy the rep's opportunities are. Conversely, if the pipeline is thin, this is now your chance to talk about how the rep can fill it. Do we need to go back to marketing to drive more leads to your team's region? Are there maybe opportunities from last quarter or from next quarter that can be pulled into the current period? Sales teams that have a good handle on their information and use applications like HD Forecast are ahead of the game because all of the relevant information that they need about coverage is already assembled. They don't have to spend the meeting hunting for information and working out the math in their heads. For example, a rep can immediately see if she's on track to hit her quota. This sets the stage to talk in more depth about specific deals. Now, this may seem really basic, but it's been amazing to me in working with hundreds of our customers, large and small, how difficult it can be to really answer this question.
Wow, Jen, that's really interesting. I know that you said that it seems really basic, but the basics are where we start. And the fact that you're suggesting starting with the same question every time really suggests to me how important consistency in the process is. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Really, so that's interesting, and I hope is a good takeaway for everybody. So assuming that the sales manager has a clear handle on the pipeline coverage and whether there is enough to meet target, what do they need to ask next?
So the next question that they should ask is, what's changed about your pipeline since last week? I've used last week as the time measurement here because, in my experience, pipeline meetings are usually weekly. Now, oftentimes, the first part of the meeting is dedicated to the sales rep providing an update to the manager about what's changed since the last time they met. Without a systematic approach, valuable time can be burned explaining how the deals have changed, what opportunities pushed out to next quarter, what new deals were created, et cetera. And not to say that it's ill-intentioned by any means, but this is where the fluff can creep into the conversation. At the end of the day, sales managers are going to have to explain fluctuations in pipeline movement to their management, as well as provide coaching and guidance to their teams on how to drive revenue. A nice way of doing this is by using the Waterfall Chart, which provides an explicit and intuitive view of how opportunity changes can be categorized into movement categories. And we'll show an example of this a little bit later. But really the benefit to your meeting is that by having a clear understanding of what happened, you can fast forward the conversation to why it happened and formulate a plan to drive deals to closure. Now, I had a customer share a story with me about how they used the Waterfall Chart, and actually it was a sales manager. He explained that they were getting close to the end of their quarter, and their VP of sales came up to him with a concern. And it turns out he had heard about a deal that had slipped out of that quarter. So the manager was able to actually pull up a waterfall chart in just a few clicks and show that while that deal had fallen out, they'd actually replaced it by creating new opportunities and accelerating another deal that was forecasted for the later quarter. So they actually were in good shape despite having that one deal fall out of their forecast.
Wow, that's really interesting, and thank you for sharing that story. I love hearing stories like that. It's an example of how sales technology is changing the game. And it's not replacing what the sales manager is doing or what the sales rep is doing. They're still valuable and integral parts of the process. It's all about visibility and knowing what questions to ask. So we've gotten through 2 of our 3 questions. Jen, now I'm looking at you. What's the third question that you recommend that sales managers ask during a pipeline meeting?
The final question to ask is, where are the blind spots? This question is all about assessing the quality of the pipeline. So with our first two questions, we determined if we had enough pipeline coverage to meet our targets. We already know what changed since last week and how the pipeline has moved. Now we need to determine if the remaining pipeline that we have is healthy or if there's any risk within those opportunities. The key here is knowing about these red flags in advance, so then you have time to proactively overcome roadblocks and build a healthy pipeline. I'll give you an example. So depending on your sales cycle, a deal that has not advanced through to another sales stage after 30 days might stick out like a sore thumb. If your pipeline progression is normally faster than that, you'll want to flag that deal and discuss it in more detail to determine how you can move it forward or how you can get it unstuck. Or if a sales manager sees a deal that has been repeatedly pushed out, they've changed the close date multiple times, they can ask the rep for more information to help get that deal back on track for it to close that month. Risk data can be really interesting, and it gives you clues into the behavior of your sales teams. I've seen it time and time again where unrealistic deals can linger in the pipeline, getting pushed from month to month, which makes it seem like the pipeline coverage is adequate, when in reality the pipeline is actually weaker than you might have thought. Layering in data science and predictive insights helps keep the conversation more objective. By using data, you're taking the emotion out of the equation and focusing on tangible ways to move the needle. The flashlight image here is a little ominous. We're gearing up for Halloween over here, but being able to remove the blind spots and putting a plan in place early will be the key to success. And let's face it, sales managers have the best intentions. They want to empower their sales teams to hit their targets and earn their commissions. It's really fun for me, when I get to train customers on HD Forecast and Sales Advisor, I get to witness that aha moment when sales managers realize that their meetings no longer have to be painful. After implementing these applications, managers tell me that they feel more like coaches rather than administrative wranglers. And they're also more confident about the information that they take back to their VP of Sales.
That's really wonderful. And fair point about the flashlight and looking in the dark corners being really scary. I mean, I can imagine starting a conversation with a rep and the rep maybe not wanting you to know everything. But I think by bringing the data into the conversation, it actually makes it a safe and actionable and objective conversation. That's exciting for me to hear, and I expect you've seen that kind of switch in your customers. So with that, at the very beginning, we gave a little teaser about what was the number one benefit. We've had some wonderful business benefits, benefits for the sales manager, for the sales rep, but what have you heard as the number one takeaway?
The top benefit that I've heard from sales managers is they get their Sunday nights back.
That's fantastic. I mean, I don't know how many of you on the phone actually spend your Sunday nights managing your sales pipeline. I suspect it's more than one. Thanks, Jen, so much for these insights. Before we actually turn it over to Q&A for the audience, let's take a moment and highlight a few elements of the HD Forecast application that helps sales managers accomplish just that. So first of all, this is a pipeline view. It pulls in all of your sales data from your CRM so that you have a view from any moment in time. It's not just a snapshot. As you see at the top, you can view your quota relative to what you've already won, the current outlook, and the open pipeline as they compare to the same day last quarter. So you can ask the question, how much coverage do you have?
Now, Chandra, I'm glad that this is demo data that we're looking at here, and I'm glad that this is not my sales team's data. But just as a third-party observer looking at this and thinking back to what the three questions are, I have some concerns. The first question is, do we have enough coverage? I'm looking at a quota here for this team of $23 million, having won $7 million so far. I'm a little nervous about the $2 million that I have in open pipeline. To me, that looks like I don't have enough coverage to meet my target.
Great. That is exactly the type of question we should be asking and the insights you should be getting. So I'd like to take a closer look at the waterfall chart. Jen mentioned this a couple of times earlier in our conversation. So this is a visual categorization of the opportunity changes in movement categories. So you can see here in the legend all the different ways that you can see how your pipeline has moved. What's been lost, what's been won, what's been moved out, just as examples.
Yeah, and I think, one of the aha moments that I have with my customers is when we just click on the waterfall chart, all of this data is organized in this way. So you're not relying on your sales operations team to feed you with this data. They're going to save all the time in the world because they don't have to put this together. It's automatically organized, and with the flow of looking at this graph from left to right, you can understand what reductions came out of your starting pipeline amount. And then as we move to the right of the graph, you can see what opportunities were created or were moved into that time frame. So it's really easy to help answer the question, what changed since last week?
Great. And finally, you can actually also drill down to the deal level. So this isn't static data. If you click, for example, on the moved out portion of your pipeline, you can actually see all of the individual opportunities that have moved out, what are the risk factors or blind spots are for each rep. So audience, hopefully you've gained some insight on the questions to ask in every sales pipeline meeting, and you also got a quick look at how inside sales helps our customers get their Sunday nights back. With that, we're going to turn it over to the audience for questions.
Hi everyone, my name's Naomi Higgins of the UK marketing team. Thank you ever so much, Jennifer and Chandra, for that insightful presentation there. As they've mentioned, we are turning over now to questions where my colleague Lars Farnstrom will be able to help answer them. So I'm just going to give it a couple of seconds to see what kind of questions are coming in. And please do remember to use the Q&A box there that's available to you. So actually, Lars, we've just had our first question, and is what does it take to implement this, and how fast is the implementation?
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that question. The implementation is actually quite straightforward, and the key reason is that we have a predefined connector to take your CRM data that we use for this type of analysis. So we're seeing implementation times of this type of feature in the range of 3 to 4 weeks, and then with a couple of days of training, and we have customers up and running in that time frame. So it's a very short implementation period.
Okay, that's fantastic. And I've actually had two questions from the same person, and I'll try and break this down for you, Lars. So how long do you recommend keeping a deal live before we should mark it as lost?
How long we should keep a deal live before marking it lost? Well, that really depends.
Before it's marked as lost.
Okay, that really depends on the velocity of the sales cycle that you have. If you have very long sales cycles, obviously you need to keep it a bit longer. But we have customers where if it has been dormant for 2-3 months, then they basically take it off as lost, and it moves back to marketing for nurturing. So it really depends on how long your sales cycles are.
Thank you. And the same another question from the same person is asking about UK support. Of course, I know the answer to that, but Lars, I'll just ask you: do we have UK support?
Yeah, absolutely. We even have our European head office in the UK, so we have a full team supporting our existing customers out of the UK already.
Wonderful. And we've got another question here. Is what if you do not have access to actual data due to the type of services you are selling, e.g. PR services, where costs vary dependent on the needs. How would you do a waterfall chart?
Okay, let's see if access to actual data. Well, the waterfall analysis actually is not a price waterfall analysis. What it is, it's a waterfall analysis that shows you the changes in your pipeline from one date to another date. So it will show you that at the beginning of, let's say, the fiscal quarter or since the beginning of the month, you might have had £2 million in your sales pipeline, and now at the end of this period, could be halfway through the month, you only have 1 million. And what the software does, the solution helps you understand, why have I gone from 2 million to 1 million pounds in my pipeline? In other words, which deals have I lost? Which deals, what is the price, is the pipeline volume decrease due to, lower opportunity values? Is it because, and this is a very critical factor, is it because some of the deals that we had in this specific period, had they moved into the next period? So this is the type of waterfall analysis we're looking at when we're analyzing the sales pipeline.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you, Lars. We've had another question kind of in par with the last one that I asked just a short while ago. Would you recommend a dormant or archive status for leads? If you don't have a definitive lost reason, I would want to track that it's not officially lost, but do want it out of the active pipe.
Yes, I mean, what I would say, we have to distinguish between opportunities and leads. So if you're talking about an opportunity that you lost for they were not ready or for whatever reason, you would basically close that opportunity with the reason due to inactivity, as an example, and automatically the contacts that you have for that opportunity should go into a nurturing program so that they keep getting notified about your company's progress, the new products and services that you have, and so that in maybe a little bit later, in a couple of months' time, you may spark some more interest for them and you can reignite the chances of opening up an opportunity.
Okay, thanks, Lars. And I've got another question here. Can I do the same with a BI tool?
No, you actually can't really do that. And this is one of the key things. It's very important to understand that in order to do a waterfall analysis, you need to store all the changes that take place around your opportunities. So typically, CRM systems are very good systems of record. This means that they will always give you the latest information up to date, but they're not going to show you the changes that have taken place. I'll give you an example. If you change the close date in your CRM system, let's say you change it to next month, you will of course have the new date in your CRM system, the new close date. However, you're not going to have the history of all the times that opportunity date might have changed. And this is very important because it allows you to understand, for instance, if the opportunity close date has changed 3 or 4 times in the last 2 months or in the last month. That is actually a signal of risk that this particular opportunity may not close in your given period. And therefore, this should be highlighted. And that's the kind of risk metrics and highlights that we're able to do in our solution.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Lars. And another one is, what areas do you see improvement within? What other areas do you see improvement?
Well, one of the things we see is we see many different areas. Clearly, the fact that you are able to identify risk factors early on in your sales review process means that you're able to understand where to go in and take action to make sure that you close the deals. And this has the effect that it increases the close rate, but it also helps you shorten the sales cycle. That's one of the key things and benefits we see for many of customers. In fact, we have some customers who have increased their close rates with up to 13%, which is quite significant. The other area we see is actually, and this is something that's very common for CRM systems, we also see an increase in the quality of the data that you have in the sales systems because we're able to identify people who may not use the system as often as they should. And this is flagged as inactivity on the opportunity on the account level. So we're able to increase not just the close rates, free up selling time, but we're also able to improve the data quality of your system so that over time your data becomes more and more valuable.
Thank you, Lars. And just time for one final question. Is there a particular period where I would see the ROI?
Yeah, that obviously depends on the current situation of the customer and where they are. But typically, we are seeing an ROI within 4 to 6 months of such a project. So it's a quick way to improve your sales effectiveness and to get a good return on your investment in this type of applications.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lars. And I think that's all we have for now, but thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. For any of those that want to review the webinar again, then it will be available on our own website at insidesales.com in the next 30 minutes, so you can see that yourselves. And thank you very much, and thank you, Lars.
Thank you.